Hi, Shalom. What is the Haftarah? Well, before I explain or try to explain the term of Haftarah, the Haftarah means or is referring to a section, a selection of verses, possibly half a chapter, sometimes a bit more, taken from the books of the prophets, the Nevi'im, from the Jewish Bible, from the Tanakh. These days, and this is the way it's been for centuries, it is added on at the conclusion of the Torah reading in the synagogue service every Shabbat morning or on a festival or on a few other occasions. After we finish the reading of the Torah, the Sedra, for that week or for that festival, we add on, as I said, a selection of verses taken from one of the books of the prophets, quite often from the book of Isaiah, of Yeshaya. The word itself, Haftarah, we're not very clear about what it means. Some say it's referring to sort of a dessert, the end of the meal, the end of the Torah reading or the learning section of the morning service on Shabbatot and on festivals. Others say it's a matter now we can open up our mouths because the Torah reading is finished and now we can possibly go on discussing the matters that were read in the Torah reading. But let's not dwell on the actual meaning of the word because we understand what it's referring to. And I'd like to explain where this custom began of reading prophets after reading something from one of the books of the Torah. Years ago, one of the periods of the oppression of a foreign ruler oppressing the Jewish people in the land of Israel, probably during the times of the Greeks, before the Maccabean revolt in the year 160, before the Common Era, when the Hellenists and the Greeks were trying to impress and trying to force the Jews to forget their Jewish identity and to become more, so to speak, modern, more Greek. They realized the way to do it was not through battle, because that would just annihilate the Jewish people. The way to do it was to get them to forget the Torah, its teachings, and its commandments. But how do you get the people to forget it? Well, they realized that would take a long time. But remember, we're talking about a time before there were printed books. Most people did not own a book. The only opportunity they had to learn Torah was to come to the service, the communal service, on the day of break, the Shabbat, and hear the reader reading some chapters from the Torah. If they could abolish that, then they could prevent Jews from learning. And in that way, within decades, within a generation or two, God forbid, the Jewish people, the next generation would have forgotten about the festivals, the laws, and the values that are included in the Torah. The Jews, who were not ready for battle, not ready for a full-blown revolt, figured out a way around that. They sought out chapters, verses from the prophets that mentioned and reminded us of main themes, ideas from the Sedra. And they chose those selections and read them instead of the Torah, because the prohibition by the oppressor was only on the matters of the Torah, but not on the books of the prophets. And in that way, during that period, when it was prohibited to read the Torah in public, in a public gathering, we were able to remind the Jewish people and go on teaching them the values and the mitzvot, the commandments that were mentioned in that Sedra, in that Torah reading, but we were doing it in a roundabout way through the prophets. And in that way, we managed to survive that difficult period. Once we were able to reinstate the Torah reading, the Sedra or the Parsha from the Torah, the sages decided, why not continue reading the sections of the prophets? It's always a good thing to learn a little bit more. And who knows, God forbid, it might happen again. So we've learned now why we read a Haftarah after the reading of the Torah on festivals and on Shabbatot. Shabbat Shalom.